Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live launch event. I'm Crystal Black. I lead marketing at cove.tool, and I am thrilled you're joining us today. This is a significant moment for us as we are here to celebrate the launch of this new book, Build Like It's the End of the World, a practical guide to decarbonize architecture, engineering, and construction, co-authored by two of our co-founders at cove.tool, Sandeep Ahuja, our CEO, and Patrick Chopson, our Chief Product Officer. Since founding cove.tool in 2017, along with Daniel Chopson, Sandeep and Patrick have led innovation in design and performance, aiming to make high-performance design accessible to all. Over the years, cove.tool has evolved. We started off as a pioneering software platform. We've now evolved into a comprehensive consultancy with offering expertise in energy performance, compliance, sustainability, and more. But let's talk about the book. The book is a compelling manifesto that challenges traditional AEC thinking, providing practical tools and real-world case studies to navigate building decarbonization. It's a guide towards a brighter, more sustainable future. And today, we're going to dive into the inspiration behind the book, discuss strategies for achieving carbon-positive buildings, and explore how technology can help make meaningful change. So we're going to also be taking your questions. So if you see in the chat, you can ask us questions anytime, and we'll get to the Q&A section later in today's event. So without further ado, let's get started. Sandeep and Patrick, congratulations on the launch of your new book.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
exciting.
This has been 2 years of a lot of work.
So to kick things off, we're going to talk about inspiration. What inspired you to write Build Like It's the End of the World? And why is now the right time for this message?
For me, it most definitely started with the inspiration I got from many of the cove.tool customers. I was able to see firms go from not being able to design very sustainable low carbon buildings to very sustainable low carbon buildings without it having to cost more, without it having to necessarily covered, which are typically the things that people think is the problem, why most people don't do it. And I saw them do this, and I was like, gosh, it's a process, it's a roadmap, it's something that absolutely can be replicated across our entire industry to not have buildings be 40% of all carbon emissions, and that's why this book exists.
And
Yeah.
Patrick?
Yeah, I guess for me, I remember it was maybe 2018 or so. I remember I was driving back from a meeting with some folks doing sustainability consulting. And I remember seeing that in Georgia in the middle of December, all the cherry blossoms were blooming. And I was like,
December, huh?
Yeah. And I was like, this can't be a good thing. It's supposed to happen in March. So I remember thinking to myself, man, what am I going to do to help move the needle on this? And I think that has inspired me to do a lot of things that I do. But when it came to the book, I was just when this opportunity came to write it, I was just thinking to myself, man, there's so much disinformation or lack of information. I think that's the part that kind of makes me gotta write this is when I'm going to project meetings, everyone's asking the same questions. And those questions are, easy things that we could do, but if we don't know the answers from a base level, then it's gonna be really hard to take climate action. So I think when I think about this book, it represents to me the beginning of where any firm should have this base knowledge so that they can actually drive for practical change. I think not just thinking about esoteric, super cool buildings, so to speak, that are the most expensive, but what are some things we can do on all buildings?
So let's talk a little bit about this practical change. In the book, you present a comprehensive strategy for achieving carbon positive buildings. So what are some key first steps firms looking to implement these strategies could consider?
I feel like the thing that I have to say is going to be the thing that most of us know already. It's to have a commitment and then a process. If we decide to do something, truly decide, not write a goal and put it on the website, not write a goal and say it in a meeting and say it in a
press release
conference. Yeah, not a press release, but truly decide to do it. And once you decide to do it, half the problem, I believe, is solved. Truly decide. And then there's so many tools, so many workflows, so many firms that have already shown us how to do this, that is just truly a matter of picking the exact right fit that works with the typology of practice that you are, the typology of designers that you are.
Yeah, I think like a lot of times people think, oh, I got to reinvent the wheel from scratch, and no one's ever done this before. I don't think people think that, but that's kind of how they go about solving the problem. And because they don't have like a base, like understanding of what's been tried before, like probably doing everything yourself probably isn't going to happen, things like that. So I think that's kind of like where I think like a lot of times people try to fixate on, oh, we should build a tool for ourselves, or we should do this, or we should do that, without knowledge of like, hey, people have been trying for 20, 30 years to fix the problem. There's probably some lessons that have learned out there.
So let's talk a little bit, Patrick, about how we envision technology helping us play a role in decarbonization. Get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, for certain. So in this book, we started writing this just as AI was becoming a thing, you could say, in the broader consciousness. But I think one of the things that I've found is that the complexity, there's this saying that like only God can watch all the sparrows. And that's simply the case, I think, when it comes to when we think about like all the data and information that we need to process to make a truly low carbon building, just tracking all your energy and your EPDs for your credits and things like that. It's like too much for most architects to keep track of. So I think like technology, and specifically around AI, will allow us to manage that complexity a little bit better. So I do think that, while some people are like, man, data centers are using a lot of power, they forget about buildings that are like. So I think the real answer is to adopt AI into our workflows to actually be able to get some of this work done.
I'm glad you mentioned workflows, because I think one of the main themes in this book is the integration of sustainability into existing workflows. So Sandeep, what are some challenges that professionals face when trying to do this, and how can we overcome it?
I think the key challenge that I have seen time and time again, I've seen this as a consultant on hundreds of projects. I've seen it as a software provider that collaborates with hundreds of leading architecture design firms across the world. But it's always change management, the word that we all hate or love. I don't know. I think most folks hate that word. But it most definitely comes down to we've always done it this way. For example, when a design team is wanting to make a low carbon structure and figure out a lower carbon material for a particular project, it is so much easier to pick the material that they used on the last project of a similar typology. If they're working on a multifamily, it is so much easier to pick the detail and the section from the last multifamily project that they did than have to research, understand what is the lower carbon option, make that detail, and then put it into that building. It's that gap from what we already have versus what new standards we need to create for our design, I believe is where the biggest workflow challenge lies.
Let's talk a little bit about cultural and economic importance of decarbonization, and how do you believe the AEC industry could drive a cultural shift towards more sustainable practices?
Yeah, I think like the focus sometimes is not on the economic thing that drives why we build. Is like there's some spreadsheet that's really driving the creation of a building. It's a financial deal as much as it is an art form. And so I think like understanding the context of like how you could use a low carbon material to actually lower the cost of the building, or you could run a cost optimization for your energy to reduce the operating costs, and then combine those things together to deliver a project that's maybe more on time. Time is money, is what people say, but it really is when you have like construction loans that are at higher interest rates. So many of these things are like, you have to find a way to tie it back into like the process of delivering a project from a financial perspective. But I think like if architects kind of adopt the language of the owner in terms of explaining how this strategy will lead to the desired outcome, it's part of a complete picture, not one thing you can do in isolation.
And the only thing I'll add to that is because when it comes to cost, there's almost two different ways I've seen to talk about it. One is, of course, the more logical way that, hey, it's actually more cost effective because your insurance rates are going up or whatever, right? The other way to think about it and talk about it, again, depending on which client you're working on, but again, truly how I believe is, what is the cost that you can put on our future? What is the actual cost that you can put on the world being pleasant to be in? versus not being pleasant to be in? What is the cost you can put on all the hurricanes? What is the cost you can, I think we're in the middle of one right now here in Atlanta with
Coming later.
with the most recent hurricane coming to us. I don't know how we can put a cost on any of that. And the more we try to justify it with insurance, it almost seems like what we as an industry, unfortunately, in many cases have to do to justify something that should never need to be justified because of the world that we're into.
It takes courage. I think that's the part that, and to have courage, you need to be armed with facts. And so without the facts, it's very hard as an architect to push for something sustainable if you can't prove that it is going to be an effective strategy. So I think like that is like where like you have to have courage to take that first step to just learn one thing.
So it sounds like that could be a little bit of, some advice you would give to say up and coming engineers and architects today, and how they could play a driving force in towards carbon positive design. Are there other ways they could potentially like influence what have maybe been industry norms that we're trying to continue to shake up and help the kind of next generation of architects and engineers?
Yeah, I mean, I really like how you frame that question, which is why this is a textbook, right? Also to be used not only within practices, but in colleges and schools, because I truly believe that any architect, engineer, construction professional that is graduating now into the future, who does not have all of the tool sets that they need to make a building low carbon, is starting from a place of lower knowledge than what they need for this world to sustain, which is also what really defines the timing of this book. Could we have written 5 years ago? Heck yeah. We just weren't doing it then. I'm glad we've written it now, but it's now or never, y'all. I mean, 2030 is here. We're beating and passing all of our goals, but like, we're not achieving any of them. We've already passed the climate threshold. That's not going back.
Yeah, I think like now it's important to remember that any reduction in carbon is progress. And I think like it's easy to become a defeatist and think that like if we don't reduce the building's carbon footprint by 90% or 80%, then we shouldn't try at all. When in reality, 40% of embodied carbon in a building is like a major, incredible reduction, or deciding not to tear down a building is like saving millions of tons of CO2. So it's like every architect is like, architects and engineers make up 0.03% of the world's population, but yet they make decisions about 40% of all the carbon emissions. Like Arab, some of these really big firms, they have like 3% of global emissions per firm. And like, that's like the equivalent of France, Spain, and England combined, one firm. So, we can look at that and say like, wow, actually the choices we make do make sense. We have the ability to make more change than almost any other industry. Everyone else is worried about like plastic straws, but like you can literally just pick a different material for your floor and see like more impact than anyone will ever make in their entire life just from one project on one material. That's a really powerful place.
That is powerful. Let's talk about the book itself. Has a lot of contributions from several industry leaders. And why is it important to you that you highlight these different perspectives?
I feel that for us to create a comprehensive point of view and for us to create a comprehensive process, workflow, manifesto, methodology, whatever you might call it, we really do need to feature voices from folks in different parts of the profession. We have folks who are on the finance side of things and bringing in the funding for these projects to happen, and from a real estate front, all the way to the folks that are building it, or the contractors, all the way to the folks that are establishing, the actual carbon benchmarks from, Kate over at CLF, all the way over to Natalie over at Beck, all the way over to Tristram over at Arab. It's all of these point of views because it's all the same problem, but we're all working on different parts of it. In fact, this reminds me, Crystal, of something we talked about, I don't know, maybe a year ago, right? It's the beach ball. We're all looking at the same beach ball with different color stripes, and we're all looking at it from different parts of it. And one might say, I see a blue stripe, and someone else might say, I see a red stripe. But the knowledge that there is both a blue and a red stripe is the most important knowledge to have for a project.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. I think like having folks like Eric, who worked on the SC 2050 for structural engineering, like those were some major contributions from people in this book. We also got some folks that in the book as they go through it, people who funded us, like Sean Abramson, people who are investing in many different categories of ways to try to like make a change. And I think like thinking about all those different people who have influenced my journey and having them also be represented in the book, like Sarah Goodman, a really incredible engineer, having all those people in there actually talking about it from different angles, as you mentioned, is just like, it's pretty gratifying to have the people that you care about professionally also in the same book that you got the opportunity to write. It's pretty cool.
So our company, cove.tool, has actually evolved significantly since its founding. And I'd love to know how this journey has even influenced the perspectives and strategies that you guys have presented in the book.
For me, I think it's all part of the same natural, frankly inevitable evolution as it seems. And I do think that the process of truly putting together the workflow and figuring out exactly, pragmatically, tactically, how are we going to go from point A to point B, where in point A is that buildings are 40% of carbon emissions, how do we go to maybe 30%? How do we go to 20%? And that comes back, the more you break it down, it comes back down to the project level. And when you're down to the project level, it comes down to the project team level. And when you're down to the project team level, then it's about, okay, what is the thing that will give us the highest opportunity for this project team to make decisions that are lower carbon about the project? And one solution for that is most definitely, hey, get our software, analyze your solutions, but then to tell that team, learn a brand new software, learn a brand new skill set overnight so that you can make good decisions overnight, that's a stretch. So instead, to partner with that team on that one project as a consultant, work with them hand in hand through the iterations to drive good decisions, all the while layering in technology, all the while layering in software so that they are left with more knowledge at the end of that project than when they started with that project, to continue on that journey with less hand-holding on the next project and even less hand-holding on the next project. So for me, it's all about a gradual transition versus an on-off.
Yeah, and I think too, like, we've worked with, over 350 firms in, so far, at various stages of their journey towards sustainability. Like, these are like the best firms. So it's like, when you think about like, what are they learning, what are they doing, being able to hear that from them, hear what's not working for them. I think that also went into this book as well. It's like learning what's not working, why are we not having success, what are the trends, being able to see that across thousands, different people, 60,000 projects that got run through cove.tool, learning those lessons and those trends. I think that knowledge is also infused into this book as well. That is maybe in a perspective that's not possible to have unless we came from that software background where we're providing that to so many different people. We're able to kind of learn what the problem is to an extent that I think is much deeper than like just kind of if you were just looking at it from a purely academic standpoint.
Awesome. So looking ahead, what do you think will be the legacy of the book? And what do you hope what long-term change do you hope to see? What's going to be the legacy?
I believe that if everyone takes one decision that they change about a building that they design in their entire lifetime, every person that reads it, you change one decision based on something you read in there, that nothing can be more gratifying, nothing can be more exciting, nothing can be more that this book could have served for me. So for me, it's all about driving those changes on a small level, because each small change leads to a big ripple effect when it comes to our space. So one change over the life of your, career is enough.
And for me, I just hope that we can avoid the Mad Max scenario. That's what I call it, where it's like, I hope someday that people are like, man, that book is so out of date. It doesn't even, and it's not even relevant to the world we live in.
Wouldn't that be great? Where they're like, please, they're talking about decarbonization and carbon zero,
We figure
please.
that out like
Or carbon positive.
I hope someday someone's using this as a doorstop and like they're like, this is the most useless book in my house. Like the cat, plays on it or something. But like what I don't want is for someone to be throwing this into a fire to stay warm, like in Mad Max scenario. Like that would be the bad outcome. So hopefully this book will be irrelevant before I'm dead. That's my
It's a great goal. It's a great goal. Well, thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights and experiences. We're going to open it up for questions. So if you have a question, you can enter it into the chat. But before that, I do want to let everyone know there is a QR code with which you can enter a raffle to get a signed copy of our new book, A Practical Guide to Decarbonize Architecture, Engineering, and Consulting. So definitely enter to win the raffle. We will look to see any questions that we may have received so far. I see a question. Is your book also about climate resilience in construction?
Yes, it certainly has an entire chapter dedicated to climate resilience within construction itself, because that is such a big part of the entire ABC picture, right? Architecture, engineering, and construction. So it truly layers that in.
Yeah, I think like there's probably the thing I always think about is right now you do need to think about, you can't put a price on power when no one else has power. You can't put a price on being above the sea level rise when other people didn't do that. If you look at some of the pictures from some of the more recent hurricanes or fires or things, you'll notice that some people took precautions, not very many, and those houses and buildings are still standing, they're fine. But resiliency is absolutely something everyone should be thinking about, because the consequences of losing your home or having your business have some problems happen to is not worth it, just saving a couple extra bucks from a construction perspective, I think.
Awesome. We are getting towards the end of our session time, so if we did not get to your question, feel free to reach back out to us and we'll make sure we get your question answered. But before we conclude today, I wanted to make sure Patrick and Sandeep had a chance to give some final thoughts that you want to share on before we sign off.
Yeah, the thing that I wanted to share was, again, right at the beginning of the book, right? Like in the dedication itself, I do want to highlight that this particular book, it's dedicated to our daughter, Aurora, who, of course, she's only barely 2 years old today. And when I think about 2030, when I think about 2050, heck, hopefully I'm alive. But I mean, I think she's definitely going to be alive, God willing. But I just really want us to have a better world for her and all of us, to kind of set a better example on what we can do and the problems that we're leaving her with and her generation with. Because what else do we have left to do in this world is to leave it better than the way we found it. And I don't think we're doing that just yet.
Yeah, because when we were writing the book, I remember I was outside in the fires from Canada. The smoke was already down here to Atlanta. And I'm sitting there with my baby child outside, and I can smell the smoke. And I'm like, man, I got to take my kid back inside from a fire like 1,000 miles away. Like, it just like added extra urgency. And it's always, you want to be urgent when you're writing a book, I guess, about climate change. But when you have like the actual person who's being directly affected, who will be there in that future that we're writing about, I think, being able to, I think in the final conclusion part of the book, the afterword and everything, writing about like where we see what the world could look like, and imagining that world for her, I think is like what I'm most excited about.
Well, thanks, Sandeep and Patrick, for your inspiring words, and of course,
Crystal,
sharing your vision with us. And a big thank you to everyone who joined us today. We appreciate your time. But let's continue the conversation and work together towards a sustainable and decarbonized future. Of course, stay connected with us by following us, cove.tool, on our social channels. You can always visit our website, cove.tools, for more information about who we are and what we do. And again, enter the raffle to win a signed copy, and we will see you guys soon. Thanks so much, and have a wonderful